Before we move into Excel to look at how to make a normal probability plot, I want to look at the two data sets we'll be using. The first one comes from the IRS, and they publish data on federal individual income tax returns. So this is a simple random sample of 12 returns in the last year, and it has people's adjusted gross income in thousands of dollars. And then we're going to contrast that with some data from the US Department of Ag, and this is the annual chicken consumption in pounds for 17 randomly selected people. So think about these two sets for a minute and think, is there one that you would expect to be skewed or one that you might expect to be more normal? Or maybe you don't have any idea at all. But we're going to go ahead and switch over to Excel and we'll take a look at those data sets and see if we can get a sense of whether one is normally distributed or not. So I'll see you in Excel. If you haven't downloaded the data sets, swing through Canvas and grab those, and I will see you on the Income tab. All right, welcome back to Excel, and we're on the Income tab, and what we see here are a list of 12 returns, and then their income in thousands of dollars. So the directions for making a normal probability plot are in your notes, and I'm going to walk you through this as well. So we're going to use the same process that we used in Chapter 5, and so that's where we're going to go to the Data ribbon and use that Data Analysis and Solver packages. So if you're on the Home ribbon, switch to the Data ribbon, and check all the way over on the side. You should see Data Analysis and Solver there. If for some reason it's disappeared, that sometimes happens when the software updates, there are instructions on Canvas on the Chapter 3 page that'll get those back on here for you, and that should only take you a minute or two to do. But once you have those, you're going to click on Data Analysis, and there's a lot of choices in here, but just like we did in Chapter 5, we're going to choose Regression. Okay, so same thing that we've been doing. And then the biggest thing to remember with this is that the variables are backwards from what we might normally expect. So typically expect X to be first and then Y, but this is backwards. They want the Y values first. So the Y values are always going to be our interesting data, which in this case is the income. So I'll highlight the income values. And then for the X range, I'll just highlight these return numbers. And then before we were clicking on this residuals and residual plot, but instead at the very bottom of this dialog box, it says normal probability plots. So we'll click that and say, okay. And then it should give us our normal probability plot. You can certainly double click on the title and change the name if you'd like. But as we look at this, what we're hoping to see is something that looks like a fairly straight line. Unfortunately, this one is pretty curved. So this data is not normally distributed. And I wouldn't have expected it to be. Typically, especially in the US, income data is pretty skewed. And so I wouldn't have expected it to be, and so this matches what my intuition would have told me. But we don't have a normal distribution with that kind of a curve. All right, so you're going to switch to the chicken tab. So we have 17 people listed there and the amount of chicken they've eaten. And I'd love for you to try this one on your own, see how you do making it, and then I'll come back and do it with you. All right, so hopefully you gave that a try. We'll go back to our data ribbon and over to data analysis. And then remember our choice here is regressions. That's the only choice we've talked about so far in this class. And so that'll be the one we're using. And we're going to highlight those Y values and then highlight our X values. Make sure that normal probability plot is clicked and we'll say okay. And here is our normal probability plot for the chicken. And this one looks a lot better, except for this one little outlier down here by the zeros. So aside from the outlier, this looks good. And kind of one key way, if you're struggling to decide if it's really straight enough, is I take the edge of a paper and I line it up to the dots, and I see kind of how they fit against that straight edge of the paper. So that gives me a good idea of that linear feel. So I would say on this one, aside from the outlier, this one is pretty reasonably normal. And so we could use a lot of those techniques we've been using in class.